Hello everybody, welcome to my channel, So Too We Begin Embroidery. I'm Shirley Stewart and I'm back this week to talk about needles. Um, as I was doing my research, I realized that there's a lot about needles that we need to learn or know about that I wasn't completely aware of. So I did dive in and do some research. So I will be reading some of the information that I have gotten off of the internet. I just Googled embroidery needles and I came up with a lot of information that is really important that we need to know in order to make sure that we stitch out really beautiful projects every time. I think I mentioned this before of the importance of a needle. If you have the correct needle in your machine at the correct condition, then you pretty much can ensure that you're going to have a good stitch out. So before I go any further talking about needles and stuff, I do want to thank you for stopping by. If this is your first time stopping by, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, like and share. I would like very much for you to be able to know when I'm putting up new videos. And also, I just want to let you know that those of you that have already subscribed and know that I put out videos every week, I'm a little late this week because I was kind of under the weather, but I'm feeling a lot better now, and I wanted to make sure that I did get a video up for you today so I can keep my consistency. So thank you for coming back, and I hope that you will continue to come back, tell your friends, like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Okay, so let's get started. So what I have on the table is an array of the needles that I already have. And there are a lot of different needles and a lot of different sizes. And I guess you're probably saying that every time Shirley comes on here, she's telling us that you have all these multiple things, which is true. Embroidery, that's the nature of it. There is no set system that is 1, 2, 3 or ABC that you can just know that you can go to. There are so many different things that are needed that you need to be aware of when you are doing embroidery, machine embroidery, whether you have a single needle machine or you have a multi-needle machine, and especially if you have a commercial machine. Needles are very, very important. So I'm going to start off with the anatomy of a needle, because understanding the anatomy of a needle will help you make the decision what needle you need for what fabric, for what project, for what thread that you're using. And I put all those in there together because, believe it or not, those are the things that you have to be aware of. So the anatomy of the needle, I will start off with the shank. Now the shank is the part that actually goes into your embroidery machine. When you're changing a needle and you stick it up in there, that rounded part is the shank. The top part of it is called the butt, and the rounded part that you see, or the rounded plus flat side that you see, is called the shank. Then you go down and it's the blade that is next. That long part is called the blade, and that goes all the way down to the eye of the needle and then the point of the needle. Now, important, the front part of your needle, and yes, we do have a back and a front of the needle, and that is extremely important. To make sure that you are putting the needle in correctly, you need to know the front from the back. The front side of a embroidery needle has a long groove that goes all the way down to the eye. And that's where the thread goes into and then enters into the eye. And you must make sure that that is always facing front. Does not matter whether you have a single needle machine or a multi-needle machine, you're going to have that front groove that is important to be facing you or to the front. And then the back side, specifically for a single needle machine and some multi-needle machines, have a flat side. Now some or most embroidery machines that are considered commercial or industrial machine use the needle that has the rounded shank. It's round all the way around. And with that particular needle, it's even more confusing to make sure that you get that in correctly. So again, let me go over. You have the shank, which is the part that goes up into the little socket where you put the needle, and you have to make sure that it goes all the way up when you're changing your needle or putting it in. So make sure it goes all the way up in there, and make sure that you have the groove of the needle, or if you have the rounded one with half round and then flat on the back, make sure the back is away from you facing the machine. And for me, that's a no-brainer basically, because it won't go in and fit any other way, which is a good advantage for those of us that have those types of machines that require that needle. It doesn't go in correctly unless you have the flat side away from you. However, if you have a multi-needle machine or a commercial machine, then you are aware that your needles may be round. And that's where some of the confusion or some of the difficulties where you could accidentally put it in wrong. So the back side of your needle that is not flat has a, well, they all have a scarf. The back side has of the industrial needle has that scarf or a little indentation that you have to be very aware of. The front of that needle has the groove. The back of the needle has the scarf or a little indentation. It's very important that that needle is put in correctly that way. Now let me clarify, because I don't want to confuse anybody about the difference between the needles. Rounded, half round, and flat usually are the needles that go into single needle machines. That's pretty much a given. Rounded all the way around usually are the needles that go into your multi-needle or your industrial commercial needle machines. Now for me, I have a single needle machine. I'm very familiar with the rounded and the flat. And when I got my 10 needle brother machine, I was pleasantly surprised that they use the rounded, half round and flat on the back needle as well. I had a different multi-needle machine that actually used the rounded needle, and I had to make sure that I put that needle in correctly. And one of the ways of doing that, and I mentioned this little tool on one of my other videos, this is just a little plier type tool that opens, it usually has a little rubber on the end to make it, I guess, easier, but you can grab a hold of your needle and you can put it into your machine, into the socket, where actually you can use it to get the needle out with, and then you can also use it to put it in the new needle in, because it grabs the needle and locks it, and it gives you control over the needle until you get it where you want it, and then you can unlock it, and then you're done. So let me show you quickly what I'm talking about. I will just put a needle in it. See, it holds that needle completely, and then when you click it again, it let go of the needle, so you're able to put it in there. So this is an excellent tool. I got it from Madeira. I don't know the name of it, but it's easy to search and find it. If you look for a little plier for changing needles, that probably will bring this up. So let me put this back so I don't lose my needle. The other thing I wanted to mention, excuse me, excuse me. Getting a little dry. The other thing I wanted to mention that I use, and I hope you could see it, It is a little magnet. It's just one little round thing that you can get. And when you order this, and I think I got it from All Stitch or All Brand, but you probably can just Google for magnet to make sure that your needle is in straight. That's what this is for. That's very important, because if you are using the round needles, it's very easy to get them in incorrectly. You can put it in there, make sure that you have the groove to the front and the scarf to the back, but then not realizing that it's crooked. And what's important about that? Needle breakage, bird nest, those things can occur if you don't put the needle in correctly. So that's one tool that you can use, because when you put this onto your needle itself, it is going to go straight. It's going to stick out straight if your needle is in straight, or it's going to curve into the direction in which the needle eye is located at that time. So you'll know your needle is not in there straight. So then you'll have to loosen it up again and move it around and get it straight. And this is an excellent tool to use to do that. So that's my tip for today, for those of you that may not be aware of it, that those two little notions are very good to use. So now that we know the anatomy of a needle, let's talk a little bit about the different kinds of needles that we have. As you see, I have a lot of different needles here. I have an array of needles, and I'm going to go over them briefly. Okay, what I have here are different brands and different types. I'm going to start with this is a universal needle, and I have different sizes in here. Now, according to my research, the universal needle is very similar to the sharp needle. The tips are slightly rounded and tapered so that it slips through the weave of the fabric like a ballpoint needle. And I'll talk about sharp and ballpoint in a few minutes. I also have an anti-glue needle. Now, what is this for? This is when you're using your adhesive spray on your fabric, on your blank or your project, whatever it is. If you're using the adhesive spray, you can gum up your needle. So the anti-needle has a special coating that eliminates that or decreases the chance of the needle gumming up. And let me read and see what it says. Anti-glue needles have a specialized coating to prevent adhesive from sticking onto the eye and grooves when sewing through the adhesive itself. It also reduces seam puckering, and it's available in two sizes, 7511 and 9014. So that's what an anti-glue needle is for. The next one that I have is a metallic needle. Now, these needles are very important if you're going to sew with metallic. I've read where people aren't necessarily using metallic needles. They use their regular 7511 and it works well for them, and that's fine. For me, I found it to not be the case, that I didn't need to have, or I felt more comfortable using the metallic needle with a metallic thread. That is already a challenging project anyway, metallic thread. If any of you all have tried to use that, then you understand what I'm saying. It can be very daunting. So I speak on three things that can help it work better for you. Number one is to have a metallic needle. Number two is to slow down the speed on your machine. And number three is to have your metallic thread going vertical. Excuse me. Most single needle machines are set up where the thread is horizontal on your machine, and that's how you thread it. But when you're doing metallic thread, you really need to have there is a part that you can purchase to put on your machine itself where you can set the thread up vertically, or you can get a little stand, which is what I have, where I can actually set my thread on the stand and then I can just loop it over and thread it into my machine. Now that helps it to stitch a lot better. So those are the three things that I recommend, especially if you're using a single needle machine. And even if you're using a multi-needle machine because your thread is already vertical. Number one, metallic needle. Number two, slow it down. Number three, have the thread going vertical. So that's my tip for metallic, using metallics in a metallic thread. The next one that I have is the jeans and denim needle. And I do exactly what it says. I use it for my denim jackets and jeans that I've embroidered on, and I feel comfortable with how that works. I've not tried to use the regular 7511 needle with that. I just instantly went to my jean and denim needle, and it worked very well. Let me see if they're saying anything about that. For the jean and denim needle, it is used for denim, canvas, and other tightly woven fabric. Used with polyester and nylon thread or heavy cotton, upholstery thread, buttonhole twist, and top stitch thread. It is sharp, strong pointed, and it penetrates dense fabrics. Also ideal for top stitching woven fabrics. Available in sizes 90-14, 116, 110-18. So you have large needle holes. The larger the number is, the larger the point and the eye of the needle is. So that makes it easier to get through that dense fabric when you're doing denim, and especially if you're top stitching, because top stitching is what you see on your jeans, on the seams and pockets, what have you, where they've actually top stitched, and you really need to be able to penetrate that. So a sharp jean denim needle will work well for that. Next, I have the next needle that I want to talk about a little bit is the jersey needle. This needle is a ballpoint needle. It is a jersey needle. I have used it on my single needle machine, and it does basically the same thing as your regular ballpoint needle without specifying jersey, because it is just for what it says, jerseys, t-shirts, any type of knit, because it is a ballpoint needle. The next needle is a typical embroidery needle. That's the title, and that's what they call it. And let me see what they're saying about the embroidery needle. These needles are designed specifically for machine embroidery, use with rayon and polyester embroidery threads. Embroidery needles work well with all fabrics. The eye of these needles is larger and longer than the universal needle, which I mentioned earlier. So they're pretty much synonymous if you ask me, not necessarily something that you need to say, okay, I need to run out and get an embroidery needle versus a universal needle, or any of these needles, to be perfectly honest about it. It has been written and suggested that you basically figure out what works best for you and the work that you do. If you have a niche business or hobby that you're only doing these type of things with these types of material, certainly you won't need all these different types of needles. It's just when you're doing multiple types of projects and stuff that requires a completely different thickness, or tightly woven or loosely woven materials, where you would be more apt to change out your needles. The standard for myself, as well as what the experts are saying, is pretty much the 7511. That's what most people use. That's what I use 99% of the time Only when I'm doing specific projects with specific types of fabrics do I reach out to these other specialty needles and use them. Okay, so let me go over the difference between a sharp and a not ballpark. What is it? It is a ball point needle. Sorry, just had a little lapse right there. But the difference between a sharp and a ball point needle is the sharp needle has a sharp point, of course, that penetrates most fabrics. Sharp needles work with woven and knit fabrics and work well penetrating heavier fabrics like denim and canvas. These needles are best because the small point leaves a very small perforation in the fabric, and that makes your fabric look crisp and clean and well defined. So if you have fabric, as it says, tightly woven, and you don't want holes, visible larger holes that can be seen because you're using a ballpoint needle and with that fabric, then it is highly recommended that you go for a sharp. And what it says about a ballpoint needle is these needles have a rounded point which is designed to slip in between the weave of the fabric rather than penetrating through the fabric. And they're best for your t-shirts and sweatshirts, such as that. So that is what you use when you're doing t-shirts and sweatshirts. And for me, to be honest about it, I use pretty much the embroidery and the universal 7511. I don't necessarily use these specific specialty needles when I'm doing my routine embroidery. Again, I don't change out that often. Now, speaking of changing out, that's very important. And that's one thing that the experts vary on quite a bit. And that is changing out your needles. Now, most people that I have heard from state that they change their needles out either once a day if they're industrial or have a very busy business, that they'll change out their needles once a day. Now keep in mind, most of these people do have multi-needle machines, industrial machines, 15 needle heads, what have you. So they're changing 15 needles every day. And it depends upon their workload. They could be changing 15 needles every project, depending upon the density of the design that they're stitching, because it can wear out the sharpness of the needle. And that comes, let me tell you what they say about needle care. It is suggested that changing your needle every 50,000 to 60,000 stitches to keep it sharp and sewing as crisp as possible. The thicker and denser the fabric may dull the needle faster, requiring you to change the needles more frequently. So that's just a general statement. You know best what works in your machine, so it may be advantageous to you to change every day or change every dense project that you do, but those are the options that you have. And if you understand the anatomy of the needle and also how they work with different fabrics, then you can make an informed decision as to what you're going to do as far as changing your needles. For me, again, I change the needle when it breaks. I change the needle when I see that it may be causing some issues with my project, which would be, again, thread breaking, bird nest, stitches being skipped, and poor registry. Those are the things that I look at, which will cause me to do the very first thing, and that's what most people recommend that you do when you're troubleshooting, to see what's wrong with your machine per se because of the outlook of your garment. And that is to change the needle first, because that usually can solve the problem. So that is my recommendation. And again, you decide what works best for you. I do want to point out, I mentioned this apparatus here, and this is what I was talking about, usage with metallic thread. If you're using it with your single needle machine, you can get one of these. They're not that expensive. I think anywhere from $15 to $20, I think, maybe less. And you just put your spool here, run it up here, and then thread it into your machine as normal. And it does assist you with making a better project or having less thread break with your metallic thread. So let me wrap up with the discussion of needles. I hope you found that this was informative and educational, that you learned a little something. I know I did. And that's my goal here on We To Begin Embroidery, because I am a beginner as well. And I'm trying to make sure that the information that I get and what I learn, I share with my audience. So thank you for stopping by. If you don't mind, please hit the subscribe button. That's very important to me. Like, share, and of course, hit the notification bell so you will be reminded to come back for my next video. Now, just before I leave, I have one little other thing. I just want to let you know that I do have my little business, and my website is soul2soulstitches.com. The name of my business is Soul to Soul Stitches and Things, and I can be reached at either of those or my YouTube page if you're interested in any of my products. All of the t-shirts that I wear, I have created. I do sublimation, which this is sublimated onto this shirt. I do rhinestones, which I've worn, and I do, of course, the embroidery, various kinds, anywhere from mass to children things and baby things and adult shirts and decorative designs. So just check out my website and you'll see some of the things that I have done. Thank you so much for stopping by. Again, hit the like button and the subscribe button, and then we will discuss another topic next time. My hope is to bring to you some information about using the Mighty Hoop system, and I will show you several different size Mighty Hoops and how to hoop them and how I'm using it with my practice. So just come back for that information. Thank you for coming by today, and have a wonderful day. I will talk to you later.